everyone, it's Jill Foster here for Penny Black with a new Positively Penny Black video. And during these troubling times, we are really committed to bringing our followers positive messages of inspiration and hope and art and craft and even distraction and sharing. So let's go ahead and get started with today's video where we will be stamping and masking some springtime critters. And just before we begin, I wanted to mention there will be a full supply list up on screen at the very end of the video. So if you want to check it out in more detail, you can hit pause at that time. So here's a look at the card that we will be creating today. This is a one-layer panel that features some fun stamping and masking, combining critter stamping, that cute teddy bear, called Furry Smile. This is our 3 by 4 inch transparent stamp, and I'm going to be combining this with some floral images. And we're going to have several videos that show you how you can mix and match and combine your critter stamps with your floral stamps for some fun. So I am stamping this using VersaFine Onyx Black ink onto Bristol paper, and again I'll have all the exact supplies listed at the very end of the video. And I have chosen this paper because it is not quite as porous, and the markers I'm going to be using blend really nicely on this. Now I did pre-stamp that on also onto some Eclipse masking paper, which is kind of like a giant sticky note, and I cut that out, and now I'm going to stamp some of the flowers from our In My Garden stamp set over the top. So you can see the mask is covering the bear, which will allow the flowers to be behind the bear and in the background. I'm also inking them with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'm going to stamp some right up here and also down in that bottom corner. And I am stamping these using my Misty stamp positioning tool, but you could certainly do this using any type of acrylic block that you have or use. I just like using the Misty so that if I don't stamp very well or don't ink up the stamp very well, I can re-stamp it again. So I'm going again to stamp this here using that VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I've chosen this because it is a waterproof ink. And now comes my favorite part, when you take that mask off and reveal sort of the scene that you have created. And it is so fun to come up with these different ways to mask the images. Now I'm going to be doing all of my coloring in using two types of Arteza markers. I'm going to use the Real Brush pens. Those are, you're going to see, have a larger tip to them. It's the one I just used here. And I'm also going to use their Twi markers. Now both of these are a water-based marker. I am choosing the different markers primarily based on color. So if my favorite brown color happens for this image happens to be a Real Brush marker like I'm doing here, I will just grab that one instead of the Twi marker. Also, if I'm doing something that needs a lot of fine detail, it's a smaller part of the image, then I will certainly reach for the Twi markers because they have a smaller tip. So these Real Brush markers have really like a real brush tip. It feels like a paintbrush. And what I do is I put the color down where I want it to be the darkest, and then come in with a paintbrush with just a little bit of water on there and blend that out. And I can go back like I am here and darkening things up, so adding another layer and blending it. And with these markers, especially on this Bristol paper, you do not have to use them with water. So you can certainly just color and blend them out with a lighter color, which I'll be sort of mixing and matching my techniques with that as I paint. So here I am just adding some rosy cheeks to this bear. This bear is so easy to color but has such an impact on a card, and I can't get over how cute he is. And I have to say, if you are looking for a little bit of a pick-me-up right now, grab some of your critter stamps and do some stamping with them. You just feel happy, and you can kind of escape from reality a little bit when you are stamping with these particular stamps. Now here I wanted to add just a little bit more red to his cheeks, but not too much. So I colored with the marker onto the acrylic block, and then I just picked it up with my wet paintbrush in order to add just a slight tint of that red to the cheeks. So I'm just continuing to go in and add some shading. This is actually a pretty, now of course I've sped up the video, but this is actually a pretty quick way to color and to paint. You can see here on these flowers, I'm not going for perfection. I'm just going to use this marker to lay down some color and then go back in and blend it with my water and my paintbrush. Now you'll notice I sort of work color or flower by flower. I do find that the ink that is laid down from the markers is easier to blend if you don't let it sit too long on the paper. It sort of starts to dry and it requires more water to blend. I'm not using too much water on my paintbrush just because this is Bristol paper. It can handle water, but I find it can't handle quite as much as, say, a watercolor paper can. I really wanted these flowers to tie into the pink color that I achieved on the bear's cheeks, and so you can see I'm just dropping in a little bit of that red off of that acrylic block that I'm using as a palette. Now here again, I'm just going to work on some more flowers, putting down the color with the marker, and then I will go back and blend. And if I want to darken things up, I can go back in and just put more color down with the marker. And I decided on the bear, I just wanted to warm up his coloring a little bit, so I grabbed sort of a peachy tone and just put that right over the top and then blended it in a little bit. So you can keep layering and blending colors till you're really happy with the end result. Now I do have all of the exact colors used for each marker, ink, stamps, names, everything again listed at the end of the video, which you can check out. Just hit pause at that time. Now I wanted to work on this background a little bit, so I'm just going to color in here with this Real Brush marker. Now you can do this technique with any of your favorite water-based markers. Again, I really do recommend though working on the Bristol paper. If you haven't given that a try, I highly recommend it. But you could also do the stamping and masking and color it in with your Copic markers as long as you stamp in a Copic friendly ink. You could you could paint it in with any of your favorite watercolors. So just stamp it onto watercolor paper and use your watercolors. What's really fun about it, I think, is that masking, that you sort of create this scene. You see your stamps used in a different way than they look just those flowers on their own or just that bear on its own. And you could change this so many different ways by stamping that bear down in that corner and using all types of different stamps and flowers for your background to create some springtime cards. Now once I blended that out, I'm going in with a little bit darker green down here. I wanted to have some more contrast between that background and the flowers. So the original green color I put down has quite a bit of yellow to it, and because I did choose to do some yellow flowers, I felt like they were just fading into the background instead of popping. So I'm just adding this darker green in a few spots, not extending it out quite as far as I did with the original lighter green color. Then I will wet my paintbrush, tap it on a paper towel, and then come back in and just blend this edge, kind of work its way up into the other color. But you can see the darkest portion of that color does remain where it was originally laid down. So you have some control where you want your areas of light and dark to be, just based on where you put the color with the marker. Time to go ahead and work on the centers of the flowers. Again, this time I just colored with the marker and then blended it out with another marker. If you use a lighter marker on a darker marker and you've noticed a little contamination to the tip, just color on a piece of scratch paper till it goes clean. So I have just a scratch piece of that Bristol cardstock off to the side where I will color with those. So I did orange and then I put a lighter yellow on top, and then I just colored with that lighter yellow onto my scratch paper. And here I'm just going to work on Finishing up some of the details here on his present and his hat. I like the touch of just a little bit of a cooler color here for these. Again, I think it pops with all of the warmer colors on the bear and the background and those flowers. Now here you can see where I'm using one of the Twi markers that has just a smaller tip, and it's really nice for getting in on the details. I also really liked this gray color. I think it gives that little bit of a pop too, and it's easy to apply. But again, I can go back in with water and blend it if I want. Now to finish off this card, I stamped the sentiment from our transparent set Birthday Humor. There's a lot of really fun, happy birthday wishes on this, but this card you really could use for any occasion. So here's a look at that fun greeting. I took that panel and mounted it to a standard size card, 4¼ by 5½ inches, and just popped it up using some foam squares. So here again is a look at the finished card, and then a close-up at some of that watercoloring and that adorable bear. He is just so happy. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button, and also ring the bell so you receive a notification each time we post a new video. We also invite you to fill your feed with our Facebook, Instagram, and blog posts, which are filled with all things happy, especially during these uncertain times. And I've linked to all of these for you down in the YouTube description box below. And if you stay tuned, here is that supply list as promised. Thanks for watching.